I am so convinced that Donald Trump is completely playing the Democrats on this one. So for a while, for over 10 years, he's been talking about just like transparency. He's been talking about draining the swamp. When the whole Epstein thing happened, he talked about getting to the bottom of it. I don't think that he would have been talking about those things that much if he was caught up in it.
With the latest on Epstein and related matters with my good friend Scott McFarland. Scott, today there was a meeting in Tallahassee, Florida with Ghislaine Maxwell. Walk us through what happened. That's as much as we can know.
Take a step back and reflect upon this moment. The Deputy Attorney General of the United States met face-to-face with a convicted sex predator in Ghislaine Maxwell, and spent most of the day doing so based on our reporting. That's a striking thing, absent all the other peculiarities of the Epstein controversy. Her defense attorney said that Ms. Maxwell did not invoke the Fifth Amendment, that she was responsive to all questions, and that it was an exhaustive set of questions. The defense lawyer is named David Marcus. Take a listen to what he said to reporters after this meeting in Tallahassee, Florida.
Ms. Maxwell answered every single question. She never stopped. She never invoked a privilege. She never declined to answer. She answered all the questions truthfully, honestly, and to the best of her ability.
Well, we don't know if she answered them honestly. Now, this isn't something that I would usually talk about because I think this is kind of a non-story to a degree. But I think what the story is people feel let down because we were told we were going to get all this information, and then we didn't. Then Kash Patel and Bongino don't seem as if they're that happy with their positions at the moment. But the main reason why I'm speaking about this is because I think people keep slipping on the banana peel with Donald Trump. So one thing he's consistent about is that he's inconsistent. And what I mean by that, he's inconsistent in the fact that he will change his position on things. But he doesn't change his position on things because he doesn't believe in them. He always wants to be responsive to data, which is a good thing. So we want leaders, we want politicians, we want a president who will look at the data and then adjust to that data. That's why I'm not a fan of when people say that someone flip-flopped. Because what should happen is someone can go in with one political view or feeling that this particular thing can happen, and then the data shows them different. When I say data, I'm not just talking about public opinion. So just like with the tariffs, you have the tariffs. I think to a degree, he was never going to make anything 200%, but he was able to then shift, and we have not had the adverse impact that they always said we would have. Not yet. So it could always happen, but they said it would be with immediate effect. Now, with this Epstein thing, my gut feeling is that he is playing them. And when we get to the end of the video, we will be looking at what the View is saying then and what they're saying now. The one constant that we know with certain people is they're always going to take the opposite position of Donald Trump. And that gets them in trouble a lot of the time. So now they're chasing this information about Epstein. I think they're going to be unpleasantly surprised when the truth comes out.
But no indication there's any progress in diffusing the political bomb for the Trump administration in this day-long interview.
And any sense at all, Scott, as to other matters that Ghislaine Maxwell might want to discuss with the Justice Department on the table, like shortening the sentence, pardon, or something like that, trading something for something else?
She has 12 more years to serve in federal prison in her case. If she's looking for leniency, maybe this is a step in the right direction. It's worth noting, though, Major Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General, former defense lawyer for Donald Trump, is friends with Maxwell's defense lawyer there, David Marcus.
And 2 days of meetings between Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell. What is going on, and what are we likely to learn about whatever has happened in that room?
So first, I want to make sure people understand that when her attorney goes out to speak and says, she answered every question and she never asserted a privilege, that may be true, but that is sort of half the story. One, she is not speaking for free. She is obviously hoping for a pardon, a commutation, or at least a significant reduction in sentence. But also, you can be, I would say, almost 100% sure that she already has an agreement with the government. It's called a proffer agreement. It's colloquially known as a queen for a day agreement. And that is an agreement where the prosecutor says, I want to hear what your client has to say, but agrees to give a form of immunity with respect to the use of that in any direct way against the particular witness. And so
the thing that's interesting, and we'll unpack this story a little bit. The thing that is interesting to me is that now the media wants to see and hear and know more about what was happening behind the scenes, because they think at some point that Trump is going to be caught up in it. Now, who knows? Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But my gut feeling is that he is playing them because he knows there's more collateral damage on their side than they anticipate. And the more that they fight and push for it, the more clamor there will be for it. And the harder it will be for them to suppress the information that I'm almost certain is going to come out that they're not going to like. So they're going to say, oh, you need to release this stuff. Why aren't you releasing it? It's because there's stuff about you. And I think he's going to say, okay, I'll release it and do some big event that they will be streaming live. And then they'll have to do like what they did with Tulsi the other day, where she's speaking live. And because she's saying something that they don't want to hear, they end up cutting the feed. But I mean, I don't, obviously, I'm just a guy with the internet connection. I don't have any insider information, but I think he's playing them.
Reason, as what I read into what David Marcus is saying, is the reason she wasn't asserting a privilege is that she doesn't need to. She already has that form of immunity in connection with yesterday and today's sessions with Todd Blanche.
And Andrew, how bizarre is it for the Deputy Attorney General, who's supposed to be running the Department of Justice, to spend 2 days in Tallahassee with Ghislaine Maxwell?
It is unheard of. It does not happen. And you know what? Add one more thing. It doesn't happen that the Deputy Attorney General, the number 2 person in the Department of Justice, would engage in this proffer session. But even more so, if they try and cooperate her based on a 2-day proffer by somebody in the Department of Justice who doesn't know the case, this could really reek of a cover-up.
Yeah, so why are the liberal media talking heads panicking over this, right? The same people who are demanding transparency, Democrats have leaned into this, and I've been trying to tell people, from a political perspective, this is Pandora's box, right? And once you go down this road, right, and you lean into, this, there's no coming back from it, right? And the Trump administration and Democrats have decided that they're going to lean into it. And Democrats may be the ones that lose this battle, because she did do that interview today with the Trump DOJ, okay? Which means that the Trump DOJ at some point will probably come out and report what was actually said during that interview, or she could testify before Congress, okay? And in my opinion, I think it is likely that if she testifies before Congress, the Trump administration is going to know what she's going to say before she testifies, right? I mean, that is essentially the situation that we're headed in here, okay? So we could hear about what was said from the DOJ with this interview, or we could hear Ghislaine Maxwell actually testify before Congress.
And this is the interesting thing. I think that there's so many people mixed up in this, or people who think that their name might be mentioned. I'm not sure that they want a big, open, type of testifying in front of Congress. I equate this whole thing with Donald Trump to like 50 Cent, right? And what I mean by that is 50 Cent is the ultimate rap troll. He's always going at other rappers about certain things. Now, I don't think someone like 50 Cent would be talking about P. Diddy and, other people and things that might have happened in a realm where potentially he himself, meaning 50 Cent, would be caught up in that thing. I don't think people do that. I just don't. That would just be stupid. So I think we all have our vices, right? So one person's vice might be drinking, another one might be alcohol. If you know you're an alcoholic, you're not going to always be calling out other alcoholics. You may call people out that their vice is something else. And I just have a gut feeling that, Donald Trump, that's kind of not his scene. This whole thing with Epstein, it's not his scene. As someone who's been a billionaire for a long time and has been a mover and shaker, Epstein probably was in his sphere, and they may have been at things together. But as far as him being one of the people that's really going to be caught up deeply in the scandal beyond maybe his name being on a list where he was at a party, I don't think it's going to go any deeper than that, which is why I think for a long time he's been calling for transparency. My feeling is he is playing them. My feeling is, keeping in mind, Donald Trump and the Clintons used to be quite close. He was at their kid's wedding, right? My feeling is he knows a lot more, even before the files came out and before like the whole, Epstein death thing. I think he's known, and you hear things when you're in those circles, and he is very aware that people like the Clintons and other high power people are going to be caught up in this. This is why I don't think necessarily there'll be something in Congress. But I think what's happening now, them calling for all these files to be released, as Greg Foreman says, I think it's a Pandora's box. And I think when you have lived a life that has not been 100% like pure, which nobody has, you may worry that your name is in a file. You may have been at a party and not done anything. You may have, been in a meeting with him and not done anything, but you're not even going to want your name mentioned, because there's a lot of people that have been defamed or been mentioned that maybe didn't do anything, but just the fact that they were mentioned in an interview, people are questioning them. So this is going to be really tricky. I'm not really that interested in the salacious details and all of that. I think it's horrible if anything's been done to children, but it's been proven. Like, I think that's horrible. But as far as this being something that's important in the political discourse, I think it's only important because people want transparency and they were promised more information than they've been given. And it seems as if there is something being hidden.
Herself. It's possible. Blue Anon accounts are already seeing what is happening. They're already kind of seeing how this is going to end up, or how this is likely to end up, because again, the same people who are boohoo whining crying for transparency all of a sudden don't want Ghislaine Maxwell to testify. Well, why is that? I thought you wanted transparency. Why don't you want her to testify? Why don't you want to hear what she has to say? They all of a sudden are not okay with the Trump DOJ talking to her to get more information out of her. Again, why is that? Well, as Keith Edwards, who is a Democrat propagandist, lays out here, right? This post went viral on X. He says, here's how it's about to go down. Ghislaine names a bunch of Democrats, maybe tosses in a few billionaires. She says Trump did nothing wrong. MAGA praises her for taking down the pedos. Trump pardons her for telling the truth.
See, but the thing is, he's always set up to fail. Trump is always set up to fail. So if he's named in it, then everyone will believe it. If he's not named in it, then people won't believe it and they'll say that there's a cover-up. This has happened throughout his entire political career. People who aren't backing him just will never back him. So like the whole Russia conspiracy thing has been disproven time and time and time and time and time again. But a lot of people don't follow the news beyond him being accused of a thing. And it happens all of the time. And this is why a lot of people just need to pause. A lot of people online, but the big media companies need to get the facts first, because what they do is they jump on a story as long as it discredits the people they don't like. They blast that story. And then when the truth comes out, they maybe put it in a 2-minute segment, if that. They maybe bury it in some, page 13 small byline. But by that time, everybody started thinking the thing. Like, if you speak to most people who like just don't like Trump and you ask them about the fine people thing, they'll be like, yeah, he said that, there were fine people on both sides. They've never taken the time to actually watch the full video and get the full context. Russia, the Steele dossier, you could just go and list thing after thing after thing. And this is one of those things. So if the truth comes out and it's the full truth and, Trump is not implicated in it, they're not going to be happy. If the full truth comes out, as long as part of the collateral damage is Donald Trump, they'll be happy with it. They won't be happy with anything less than that, though.
So in this Blue Anon conspiracy theory scenario, right? Basically, this would be a full-blown backfire on Democrats, because Democrats demanded that Trump release the Epstein files, knowing damn well there are reasons why he can't release everything. Like, for example, he's already tried to have the grand jury testimony released from the case in Florida, back in Florida in the mid-2000s, and the judge denied it, right? He has requested other grand jury testimony be released, but we're going to have to see what happens with that. That's still subject to judicial review. So you have courts blocking it. You also have the DOJ. They're basically not releasing it for whatever reason. They're saying that they don't have any hard evidence to prosecute anybody. But the Wall Street Journal article that came out basically claiming that President Trump was told that his name was in the files back in May, along with hundreds of other prominent figures as well, too. So not just Trump, but a lot of other people. Now, again, I don't know if we should believe the Wall Street Journal on that, but I'm just saying it.
And that's the danger in the society that we live in right now. A name being named in it does not mean guilt. But if we want to make an issue or a case of it, just the fact that the name is named, people will say, yep, see, they were named. Now, I think with certain names, it's a lot worse, because there's certain names that are on a list where they've over years been going out to the island and have been frequenting parties with him. I think there's a big difference when you're in that circle, or maybe you've just moved into that circle and you have no idea who this man is, and you're just told, oh, you're invited to this very influential person's party, and you go and you don't know who he is, and you're on some guest list. I think that's very different than people who, after Epstein was convicted, still associated with him proactively beyond any reasonable need to do that. So I just think the whole naming thing, that's just a reflection of the society that we live in right now, where we just want to attack people. That's very different as far as just being on a list and being proven that you actually did something wrong. So we will see whose names are there. And I think those people deserve the opportunity to defend themselves, to present their own facts, just like Dershowitz did, where he was accused of certain things. And then those accusations had to be taken back, because you couldn't tie the two things up. I think this is going to get really messy, and I think there's a lot of people that are guilty of horrible things that need to be called out. I don't think it will happen, though, because I think these are very powerful people, and powerful people will protect each other. And right now, because it's kind of a political football, I think they're going to call for things that they either know they don't want or know won't happen. But in the meantime, they're just looking for a story or some type of scoop to be able to say, see, this is another thing that makes Donald Trump a horrible person.
Kind of fits the narrative that, who knows, maybe the DOJ is not putting it out there because there's a giant cover up for all of the elites that were allegedly involved in this, right? I'm just saying that, yeah, I mean, there are reasons why the DOJ is not releasing it, reasons that Democrats knew or they know about, and that's why they were confident playing into this, because they never thought that any information would ever be released, which would hurt Trump, because MAGA would just continue to attack Trump for not releasing anything, and Democrats would benefit because they would never have to release anything themselves, right? That is the stupid game that they were playing. But the Wall Street Journal article also stated that the reason why they're not releasing anything is because they really don't have anything to release that's incriminating outside of CP and, victims' information basically related to Epstein, right? So, again, who knows what to believe in regards to why the DOJ is not actually releasing it. Regardless, we know that Democrats didn't release it, right? And if there was really incriminating information against Trump, then they would have released something, right? The problem that Democrats got themselves into is that they basically just hoped that their calls for transparency would not go anywhere except for the Trump administration not being able to release anything for reasons that they understand with why the Trump administration is not releasing anything. So they know that
that's a good point that he made. And I think as many mistakes as the Democrats have made just to get Trump, I think they would have broken every single rule if they had found anything that directly linked Donald Trump to anything meaningful as far as misconduct or misbehavior. Remember, he got impeached for a phone call. He got impeached around January 6th. So anything that they can find, even if they had to bend the law, they would do it. Look what happened with the convictions in New York. Like, so you have a person who's a real estate mogul who has borrowed some money. The documents are saying that allegedly the properties were overvalued. He paid the money back. Even the lenders were like, we didn't have a problem with it. He was convicted of that. So if they can do something like that with something that's fundamental, I work in the mortgage industry, and I know that, when people are selling their homes, they want to get the best value, right? But the bank will do their due diligence and value the property anyway, right? So he got convicted around silliness, and all of the other cases were just real stretches, right? So if they had something on him like this would be what they would feel, which everything that happens, they feel like is the end of his political career. They would have let something out. So I'm pretty confident that there's not really anything there that they could use. And, now they're just trying to push, as Greg Foreman says, for something that they know that he won't be able to do.
It's likely that they're not going to release anything. So because they don't release anything, Trump is going to get backlash from MAGA. And they was hoping that would be the end of it, right? That nothing else would come out and that nobody would be incriminated that is a Democrat, right? That is the game that they were playing. However, that is a dangerous game, a game that looks like is going to backfire on Democrats, as this Blue Anon account lays out here, because Ghislaine Maxwell can say anything, right? She's looking to get a pardon, right? She's looking for her freedom, okay? And as these, liberal media analysts imply, well, Trump is friends with her lawyer, right? They're basically, again, setting up their Blue Anon conspiracy theory that they're going to cut some deal with Ghislaine Maxwell.
And when they make these type of accusations, like, two things can be true at the same time. Political circles, financial circles, the elite circles, they're very small circles. Like, they all go to the same colleges together. They all, they're tight circles. So I was watching this thing the other day about PayPal. And like all of the people that were involved with PayPal, Peter Thiel and some other people, they said that like a lot of the big tech companies that are multi-billion-dollar tech companies now all were at some point involved in the whole PayPal thing. So it doesn't necessarily mean because, there's some type of relationship or some type of connection between two people that it's that unheard of. If you recall, during the whole Trump trial, there was some prosecutor that was like a high-level government prosecutor who took a demotion to be able to work on the Trump case. So all of these things are not that odd, right? So once you get to certain levels, there's just going to be certain people that you are in the same sphere. It's the whole 6 degrees of separation thing, isn't it? So I just think when they level these attacks and they like, that's a gotcha. If you just think about how small the world actually is when you start to move in certain circles, then, you realize that it's not necessarily something nefarious.
to come out here and to say a bunch of stuff that's bad about Democrats and to exonerate President Trump and say, well, you know, he never went to the island. He never had anything to do with it. And if that's the case, Democrats dug their own hole, right? They dug their own hole. They deserve it. I don't know if Ghislaine Maxwell in her testimony or whatever she has to say is trustworthy. I have no clue whatsoever. But what I do know is that Democrats, because they decided to play this game, that they had no idea that it would turn out this way, because they knew it was a reason why the Trump administration is not releasing those files, and that it is likely that those files probably won't be released. And they thought that, well, as long as he doesn't release the files, which they know he's not going to release, then he's just going to take MAGA backlash, and we can pretend as if we want transparency, and we'll never have to produce anything, right? We'll never have to actually, you know, give any transparency ourselves, right? But again, Ghislaine Maxwell, though, her testifying.
And that makes me think about something else. That makes me think about the boomerang. There is no guarantee that the Republicans will win the next election. So 2028 comes, and, you know, the Democrats tend to drag these things out. We're still talking about January 6th, right? If they then come into power, the boomerang hits them, because then the Republicans can say, well, release this, release that, knowing what they know, whatever it is, right? And this is the stupidity of the political games that people play. And this is also, I guess, sometimes the naivete of the voting population. Politicians will say whatever they need to say to get or keep power. So today they'll be against something like, I'm going to do a video on the gerrymandering, so the redrawing of certain districts. Like, if it's to their benefit, they will be all for it. If it's to their disadvantage, then they will oppose it and say it's racist and say it's unfair. This is the game that people play. But I just think as voters, we shouldn't fall into the traps of saying that, you know, what they're saying it because it's the right and moral and principled thing to say. They're saying it because it's what's going to keep them in power, or it's going to get them power. So I think everybody's always got something to hide, because there's always going to be something that might be politically disadvantageous to you sharing or getting out or passing. It's just like with the bill, the tax bill that was set to expire. If the Democrats had won, if Trump had lost, they'd have been in a pickle, because they would either have to let the breaks expire, and then everybody would have this huge tax hike, or they would have had to reinstate the Trump tax cuts, which would then mean that they weren't just for the rich. But this is the game we play. And as voters, we just need to do a better job with holding people to task and not just being 100% partisan. We need to call people out when they're not doing the right thing, even if it's our guy.
And depending on what she says, it's going to be hard for Democrats to come out here and to now say, oh, no, we shouldn't believe her, or that, oh, wait, we shouldn't learn more about what happened, or we shouldn't allow her to talk just because she's exposing Democrats, right? So again, they put themselves in a very stupid situation, and you can see the writing on the wall, because the Cacklehands on The View, they're also in full-blown panic mode over this, and they're questioning whether or not Ghislaine Maxwell can be trusted. So again, understand what's happening. They're already putting out the narrative that, wait, no, don't trust Ghislaine Maxwell, right? We told you that we want more transparency, but just not from her, not from Jeffrey Epstein's partner that was directly involved in it. No, you can't trust her, because she is not going to say what we want the public to believe about Trump and his involvement, and him being involved in those activities, right? That's essentially what's happening.
The View is the absolute worst, but it's really great for reaction videos, because we know no matter what they say, it's always going to be negative against the Republicans, no matter what they say, even if it contradicts their worldview, even if it contradicts things that they said last week. At the end of this video, there's a side-by-side of what Sonny was saying and what Sonny is saying now. And it's like they forget that everything is recorded now. So they'll say a thing, and the very next week they could say the opposite, but they're never in an environment where someone's going to challenge them or call them out they're never in an environment where someone's going to come with receipts. Other than, I remember when Ted Cruz was on the View, and he pulled out the piece of paper and he had the receipts. But that doesn't often happen, and maybe that's why they don't ever have any Republicans on there.
So without further ado, let's get into it.
So the pressure keeps mounting on the Trump administration over the Jeffrey Epstein files. So yesterday, the Justice Department met with the woman who knows all of Epstein's secrets, Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's been in prison since 2022. Trump was asked about this the other day. Watch.
Your Deputy Attorney General is reached out to Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney asking for a new interview.
Yeah, I don't know about it, but I think it's something that sounds appropriate to do, yeah.
Do you have any concern that your Deputy Attorney General, who's your former attorney, would be conducting the interview, given
No, I have no concern. He's a very talented person. He's very smart. I didn't know that they were going to do it. I don't really follow that too much. It's sort of a witch hunt.
It's about you, though. It's about you. So his former attorney is going to conduct the interview. So let me get this straight. A convicted felon sent his failed lawyer to question another convicted felon.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Democrats get exposed. That's what they're upset about. That is what could possibly go wrong for Democrats. Them getting exposed. See, again, this is why Democrats should not have played this stupid game. When you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. This is why Democrats, they need to seriously move.
I disagree with that as well. So yeah, you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes, but they've won on a lot of the issues, even though they're playing stupid games. Now, they lost the election big time, but I think what will happen is, as with most issues Trump related, there's just certain people that want to believe the bad stuff, right? So people will believe it. And the more you just keep putting it out there and ignoring the facts when the facts come out, and cutting news feeds when Tulsi Gabbard is laying out her case against Obama, the more people only hear what you want them to hear. So yeah, they can set up the narrative, and to a critical thinking person who's objective, who kind of doesn't care either way, right? They may be able to put the facts together. But for the people that watch The View and they're not hate watching it or watching it to get reaction videos, those people will be like, aha, we can't trust her. Until she says something negative about Trump, and then they're like, aha, she's the most trustworthy person on the planet.
Move beyond being Trump deranged, okay? Every attack against Trump is not an attack worth engaging in, especially on this subject. Especially because we know there's a lot of prominent Democrats that were probably hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein. And Ghislaine Maxwell is likely that if she testifies, her testimony is going to be basically the only transparency that we really get. And whatever she says, that's likely going to sway public opinion a lot, okay? So again, this is not looking good for Democrats at all. That's where the panic is coming in.
Republicans were split on this too. Let's watch the clip.
This is a person who's been sentenced to many, many years in prison for terrible, unspeakable conspiratorial acts and acts against innocent young people. I mean, can we trust?
I like Mike Johnson, but doesn't he look like he's about 17 and wearing makeup? He's done some good stuff, but I just had to comment on that. I'm not being mean-spirited. I'm just making an observation.
That's what she's going to say.
Why subpoena her if you can't trust her?
Well, because the one thing we got holding over her head is if we find out she lies, she goes back to her original sentence. And that's looking at lifetime. And if she's looking at maybe parlaying this into reducing her sentence, then we could have some leverage there.
So I just want to say this one thing, because hours after Ghislaine was arrested for transporting children for illegal sex acts, Trump said, quote unquote, I wish her well.
Yeah.
Now, what do you really think will be accomplished by talking to her? Can she be trusted at all?
You know, I'm sort of on the fence on it because, you know, as a former federal prosecutor, I use cooperators all the time, people that were in prison. And when you get into the room with them and you want them to cooperate, you generally do have them fill out a form that says, if you lie to me, your sentence will not only will not be reduced, It'll go back to your original sentence if there was a plea deal, and I'm going to tack on 5 years for perjury.
Good.
Right? And so that's that, and they must sign that even before the discussion begins. And so there is something for her to gain, though, from it, which would be, a Rule 35 motion, which means, the government could reduce her sentence, Trump could pardon her, he could commute her sentence. There is something in it for her, but that doesn't make her testimony, if she testifies or if she cooperates, any less trustworthy, in my view.
But wouldn't pardoning her make it look bad?
Yes, it would, but he's
not as
done,
he pardons her as he's leaving office.
Yeah, and he's pardoned the January 6th insurrectionists as well. But the one thing that I do find untrustworthy is the fact that his former attorney, Todd Blanche, is now the second in command at the Department of Justice. I mean, for his former attorney to be conducting the interview doesn't make sense, because
that's disingenuous, because in these political circles, everybody kind of keeps the loyalist. So like, you might have someone who was a congressman and then they became a senator. They take the loyal and good staff with them. If that person then becomes governor, they're going to take those people with them. You need people who who you trust, who are tested around you, even more so as someone like Trump, who in his first administration had leak after leak after leak. It's not uncommon for politicians to have these people around them that had maybe served in a personal capacity at some point, proven themselves, and been given a promotion. We do that in regular life. Like, CEOs and executives do that. I've done that. Like, I've had roles where I've moved banks, and then I take some of my staff with me. It's just common. It's, this is what I'm saying. When they frame these things as if they're odd or peculiar or untoward, it's just disingenuous. And that's how they don't have a solid argument.
It's just rife with conflicts of interest.
I am interested.
So I want you guys to understand, again, clearly they're concerned about the fact that she's not going to say things that they want her to say. Now, do you think that these people will be asking the question of, can she be trusted, if they thought that she would say things to implicate Trump, right? If they thought that.
Exactly. And remember Avenatti? Remember that guy that was, he was the one representing Stormy Daniels. So they looked past all of Stormy Daniels' questionable things because she was going up against Trump. Then you had Avenatti, who at one point they were saying that he should run for president. He's now in prison for, I believe, fraud. So anyone that has anything bad to say about Trump, they're happy with. It doesn't matter what their character is. It doesn't matter who they are, where they come from. It doesn't even matter if it's true. As long as it's someone that is willing to go on a show and say a thing, even if it's made up and even if it's obviously untrue, they're going to be happy with it. So what Greg Foreman is saying here is so true. They're worried, not because they don't believe that they can trust her. They're worried because she may not implicate Trump.
Ghislaine Maxwell will come out and say that, yeah, Trump participated in these crimes too, right? Do you think they would be coming out here and saying this? No, they wouldn't be saying this, right? See, again, the game is all good when you have the Trump administration on the ropes, knowing that they can't really release anything, knowing they're not going to release any files, right? Oh, it's all good. It's all fun and games, right? Kiki, ha, ha. Oh, Trump is on the list. Ha, ha, ha. Now that the tables have turned, all of a sudden, well, I don't know. We should get more transparent. Wait. I thought you wanted more transparency. Now all of a sudden, they don't want transparency anymore. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Interested in what Ghislaine has to say, because I don't think we know what she could say.
She's never tested. She's never.
Can I say, have you noticed everyone says her name differently? I'm not sure how to say it either, but I just love how everyone says her name differently and they say it without missing a beat. I don't know if it's Ghislaine or Ghislaine. She just got called Ghislaine. I don't know what it is, but I do think that there should be one consistent way of saying it.
Cooperated with prosecutors. We don't know her version of events.
Right. And the problem is, if the only leverage you have, as you mentioned, with cooperators is to reduce their sentence, That's not going to sit well with anyone that's interested, because 20 years was a sweetheart deal for her.
It was.
She was an enabler. She is the only reason Jeffrey Epstein was able to live the life he had.
Wow.
She deserves more time, not less, and more importantly than her testimony, which, again, I don't think it hurts to have her sit down and see what people think of it, because it's not like they're just going to believe it because she says it. You have a gut when you're listening to people. The FBI needs to release how Jeffrey Epstein made his money. That man was a college dropout who spent a minute on Wall Street and then did financial services for some billionaires, and there's no record of the transactions of money.
Yeah.
Anyone who's ever worked in a company or in finances know there are transactions. No one knows how he got his money, and I think that is the way to go to find out more.
That's the thing about a cooperating witness. You want corroboration. That's what they would get. They would get something like that.
I personally don't have any interest in hearing from Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't trust somebody who's a convicted sex offender or sex trafficker, somebody who there's a special evilness to me of a...
That's a naive way of looking at it, because just because she is all of those horrible things, it doesn't mean she cannot say something that is of value, and she can never be trusted in any context. And Alyssa, oh, she's the worst. Like, because she's supposed to be the Republican there, and I very rarely hear her say anything that would reveal her to be a Republican. And I know she's salty about the whole thing with Trump, and I believe she was an aide to Pence and all of that stuff. But like, just call it like it is. If you're an independent, say you're an independent. If you're a Democrat, just say you're a Democrat, right? Like, it's just like with Ana Navarro, same thing. Like, in case you didn't know, when you look at The View, it's supposed to be Whoopi, who's Whoopi. It's supposed to be Sarah, I believe her name is, and she's supposed to be the independent. Then you have Ana Navarro, who's supposed to be a Republican. And then you have Sunny, who is Sunny, and she's the worst. And then you have Alyssa, who's supposed to be a Republican. It's just so dishonest. And I don't know why they have to be dishonest, because if you watch it more than 20 minutes, you can see where their political alliance truly lies. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just be honest about it. Call it what it is.
Woman who would help a man traffic underage women for sex abuse. In the Southern District of New York, attorneys wrote in 2002, Maxwell engaged in a significant pattern of dishonest conduct. The defendant has lied repeatedly about her crimes, exhibited an utter failure to accept responsibility, and demonstrated repeated disrespect for the law and the court. This is a person whose only motivation in my eyes would be to lessen her own sentence.
Yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
on for
And with that said, I forget the guy's name. The guy, there was a guy that used to be Trump's attorney. Put it in the comments, please. And he testified against Trump, and everybody lined up to have him on their show. He was a convicted felon. He had gone to jail for lying. He had proven himself to be dishonest. He had done all those things, but because he was willing to testify against Trump, everybody wanted to hear what he had to say. And this is where, come on, guys, when you see this, you have to call it out. And you have to be able to vote beyond just saying, well, I'm always going to vote blue. I'm always going to vote red. And because this is the problem that we have. They know they can lie. They know they can get away with this, because regardless of what happens, they'll have your vote. So when Alyssa is talking all this trash about, well, I don't believe. Listen, the woman's done horrible things. Ghislaine, or whatever her name is, has done horrible, terrible things. And she needs to get her just dessert, right? That's true. With that said, it doesn't mean that everything she might say is untrue. And as Greg Foreman has been saying, as I've been saying, they'll make all these allegations and say all this stuff why she cannot be trusted. But the moment she says something horrible or negative or something to implicate Donald Trump, then all of a sudden their story will change and they'll have her on repeat. And if she wasn't in prison, they'll probably go to prison and interview her if she's going to say something bad about Trump.
20 years, why not perjure yourself and hope that Donald Trump might pardon you or that you might get some kind of sweetheart deal? And Tim Burchett, that congressman at the end, sort of alluded to that at the end, sort of like, well, she has this incentive. I want to see grand jury testimony, and I want to see what else the Department of Justice has. They have witness testimony, and I'm also more interested in hearing from actual victims if they're willing to share what they experienced.
But would we ever get to see?
Yeah, so here's the thing. She doesn't have to necessarily lie. But again, she could basically say that X, Y, and Z person, this prominent Democrat, that prominent Democrat, liberal Hollywood celebrity was there, right? They may have been in the presence of, this victim, that victim, right? But she doesn't have to necessarily make any specific allegations, right? But she could say a lot of things to make the public believe, or to strongly believe, that specific people could have been involved in certain crimes.
Exactly. And now, because we kind of try people in the court of public opinion, and if whoever gets that headline out first and can propagate that the most effectively, they win. So you can ruin someone's life based off a lie if it gets picked up by the media. And this has happened time and time again, where some narrative has come out, the media has jumped on that narrative, they've put that out, and they've ruined people's lives. People have been doxxed, all kinds of things have happened because of this exact same thing.
So again, there's ways that she could finesse it. And again, what they're concerned about is the fact that she's going to say stuff that is not going to align with the narrative that they want to put out here, which is that Trump was involved. See, when you lean into things, probably just because you want to attack Trump, right? You just want to hurt Trump, and this happens time and time again to Democrats, and I don't know why they can't learn their lesson. The attack on Trump is not an attack worth engaging in, right? Sometimes it's better just to chill, right? In fact, in this case, the attack would have been more effective had they just let it be a MAGA thing, right? And they just would have went on about their business and just let it go. It probably would have worked out better. But no, because the liberal media had to get involved, the Democrats had to get involved. This is what they signed up for. This is exactly what they signed up for. And honestly,
it's going to backfire.
Whatever she says, I'm very interested in learning about it. I want to hear exactly what she got to say.
Going to backfire.
And let the American people determine whether or not they believe her. But my gut feeling is that when she testifies, it's not going to be things that Democrats want to hear.
All right, so we're going to move into the hypocrisy of Sunny Hostin. She's very quick to say she used to be a federal prosecutor, and she's achieved great things in her life. I give her props for that. But she's so delusional, and she's so Trump deranged that she'll say one thing on camera on a show that is aired across the world, and then she'll come back and say the exact opposite, as long as it's the opposite to whatever the Republicans or Trump is saying. Check this out.
Dying for this information. There was some sort of list that everybody thought was going to come out, and who's on the list. What's important for us to note is we shouldn't be repeating names that are on the list, because just because your name has not on the list, but in the documents, just because your name is on the documents doesn't mean that you have done anything criminally irresponsible or illegal or civilly irresponsible.
Or that you were a client.
Or that you were a client. These documents, as I read them, only reflect Epstein's sexual assaults of women and his sexual behavior. So I think that...
And Ghislaine also?
And Ghislaine. And so being named in this suit does not equate to being accused of wrongdoing. And I think that is extremely important, because conspiracy theorists seem to not...
I agree with that, and I think she was right on that. And I do want to make my comment on the whole concept of conspiracy theorists. I remember growing up that a conspiracy theory was something like, flat earth and things of that nature. Now they consider anything that doesn't align with the popular narrative as a conspiracy theory. And my view on that is most things nowadays are a conspiracy theory until they're not. So there's a lot of things that is just obvious, like the whole thing about Biden. Bless him, he's an older man and he was clearly struggling. It was not a conspiracy theory. It's something we could see right before our eyes. And you don't wish that on anybody. But noticing the thing is not a conspiracy theory. But then now all these books are being written. And one of my predictions is they're going to throw him even more under the bus, because he's outlived his use. God forbid, I know he has prostate cancer, and I just pray that, he can be comfortable and all of that. When he passes, all of these news stories are going to come out. They're going to throw the entire Biden family under the bus, because there'll be nothing left politically for them to gain by defending him. And, you know, if God forbid he does pass away before the next elections, a lot of people's narratives are going to change, because they have to decouple themselves from that failed administration. The American people voted him out because they weren't happy with what he was doing. But you have people like Kamala Harris and other people that were very close to him that still have not been pinned down on what did you know and when did you know it. There's two obvious things that anybody can see here. Either they weren't aware of his obvious cognitive decline, which disqualifies them to be president of the United States, or they were aware and they covered up, which again disqualifies them. So anyone that was in the cabinet, so Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, definitely, people like that should be disqualified. I'm not sure about Gavin Newsom because I'm not sure how much access he had, but I would say anyone that was in the cabinet should be disqualified from running for president. And when I say disqualified, obviously they can run, but I don't think any serious voter should take them seriously if they could have put the country in jeopardy simply to hold on to power, keeping in mind, and this is where they talk about the soft bigotry of low expectations. This is where the hypocrisy comes in. We had a historic first by having the first African-American, or whatever she is, female vice president. She was the next in line. If they had removed Biden, which there is a constitutional there's a constitutional provision there. That's what I was looking for. There's a constitutional provision there too. If the president is incapacitated or various other things, you can remove him. It could have been honorable. It could have been done decent and in order. It didn't happen. And because they didn't do that, that means somewhere in those circles, whether Obama was in those circles or whomever was in those circles, they didn't have the confidence in Kamala Harris. Keeping in mind, when she ran for president, she didn't get the Democratic nomination. She had to drop out. Her poll numbers were really low. And keep in mind, she was the least rated vice president in American history. All right. So this is not because she was a Black woman. This was not because of anything like that. This was just because she was bad at what she does. Right. So there are people that did not want her to be president, and therefore they supported the whole facade that we could all see. They supported the facade that anything that anyone was noticing was just a conspiracy theory. I went off on a little bit of a tangent, but I was just talking about Sunny Hostin. What she said just now, I believe, was correct. But let's see what she has to say now, where it's not politically expedient for her to align with what Ghislaine Maxwell might be saying.
Not understand or enjoy facts. Yes. These are the facts.
There is a list. Trump's name is on the logs, the passenger logs of Epstein's aircraft at least 7 times. That's already been made public. I mean, of course, Trump is denying any and all allegations, but all of that information is out there. Why not just put it to rest and say, release the list?
Would you consider a pardon or a commutation for Ghislaine Maxwell if she's
It's something I haven't thought about. It's really something. It's something I'm allowed to do it, but it's something I have not thought about.
But you wouldn't rule it out.
Todd Blanche is a great gentleman. He's a great man. He's a great lawyer. He's got a great heart. But he's over there now. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I certainly can't talk about pardons.
Can you trust what she's telling him? She's a convicted trafficker who's eager to get out of prison.
Well, he's a professional lawyer. I think he's been through things like this before. But you should focus on Clinton. You should focus on the president of Harvard, the former president of Harvard. You should.
See, Trump knows something. So in closing, I think he's trolling them. I think, as always, he's playing 3D chess and they're playing tic-tac-toe. And I think their disdain for him and their desire to just get him in something is blinding them, and they're making really bad decisions because of that. All right, so that's it for me. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you comment. If there's anything that I've said that you disagree with, put it in the comments. I don't know much in the sense that I don't have any insider information. I'm just a guy with the internet connection and a video camera. So thanks for watching, and make sure you check out some of the other videos because I try my best to provide some good content, my commentary. And lastly, I do get a lot of the content from Greg Foreman, the Black Conservative Perspective. Make sure you check him out. He's almost at 1 million subscribers. It would be great to get him there. I don't know him personally, but it would be great to see that plaque on his wall when he's doing one of his